Hey everybody, welcome back. I wanted to do a quick video today to talk about tip placement when you're doing a French design with tips and instead of the colored acrylics or gels if that's what you're using. Here I have 3 different types of tips. This one is a weld tip. It's a half weld. I do not have any full weld tips because I don't use them anymore. So I couldn't find any, even my leftovers floating around. This one is a wellless, so it's a completely wellless tip. This one happens to be an OPI Structure 2.0. Not really sure what this one is, I forgot. This one is a colored tip, and it also happens to be a half well also. And this one is specifically, it's a colored tip, but it's specifically the wrong size. So I'm going to use it to show you what not to do. So here I just have a nail that I'm going to use for this demonstration. I've been noticing on the nail group that a lot of the women have been asking questions every so often about how much of the nail bed should be showing when doing a French design. Now, if you are using tips to do the French design and you have a quarter well, the well is kind of a stop for you. It's a natural stop. And what it can do is you naturally butt up against the nail and there'll be a natural stop point, okay? But even that sometimes is a little bit too far in my opinion. So what you want to do is right here you can see the natural free edge color, that nice line right here of the off-white, okay? That is the part of the nail that is detached from the skin underneath, from the nail bed. That's the part that is free. That is your free edge. And ideally, that's where you want your tip. So you would want your tip to only cover that amount, okay? So roughly there. And you don't have to go all the way down to where the stop would be, which would be here in this case. You don't really have to do that, okay? So you would, if I were using this tip, I would glue it about right there. And the reason I would go a little bit further is just because of the side here. There's a little bit of a gap, but I mean, that could even be filed. That could even be filed. So I would generally go, you want to go a little bit further than the free edge because you want to give your client room to have their nails grow out without it, being noticeable and looking like you can see the free edge, in the back of the tip. So you do kind of want to go a little bit behind that. The problem that some people have, especially if they're working on people who don't have much of a free edge, they tend to glue the tip about halfway down sometimes. And so if you can see, that kind of doesn't give you the best look as far as the nail goes. And then if we were cutting it, the nail would look like this, okay? We're cutting it about there. So in this case, like I said, you would want to go about that length, okay? This one does not have a very deep cut smile line. Let me get rid of that tip. This one does, however. This one is the wellless, and it does have a pretty deep smile here. And you can cut a deeper smile into tips like this. You can even use your e-file to do this. You just grind away some of the plastic here and just make it even, and you'll have a better smile line if that's what you're looking for. Okay, so these, same situation. These are going to come further down on the sides of the nail here and here. But in this general area, you still want it to be fairly close to the free edge. Okay, so this one, I would glue about right here. Okay, and sometimes, even with these, people will try to make them fit on clients that don't have much of a nail bed. So they'll sit there and they'll glue them back here, or you'll cut these pointy corners, to make it kind of fit, and you'll glue it really low. If you're doing that, you're losing a lot of the pink coloring of the nail bed area. And so then when you cut the nail, it's not going to be, you know, very nice looking. So you do want to give yourself more surface for the nail bed. Let's see if I can hold it here. And there you would get a much nicer French design, if you can see that. Okay. And so now colored tips. Let me get more in the frame. Okay, colored tips. The same situation, because you're not going to be buffing these out. You're not going to be blending them in. You know, with colored tips, you can pretty much just start laying acrylic right on top. Tips are plastic. They are going to melt when they come in contact with monomer. There's really not much of a need to buff the surface unless you're going to be using them with gel. Gel will need a rougher surface to stick to. So if you are just using acrylic, you can glue them on and then proceed into your acrylic application. So for colored tips, it's the same thing. This is a half well, like I said. See? Colored tips, you will go same thing about that area. And if you need to trim the sides, it's better to do that than to use a tip of the wrong side. And I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so this one would go to about here. So you would end up with a lot of surface of the nail plate to be left in a natural kind of pink color. Okay, and so that would give you a better look overall. Now, if you are using the wrong size nail tips, this one is too small for this size of the finger. And you'll notice if you just place it on top, putting absolutely no pressure, it does not go side to side. Okay? But if I press it down, it will stretch and it will fit. But the problem is that you see that springy action? It is going, if you glue that down, that is going to constantly add pressure in the wrong direction, and it's going to be wanting to pop off. And then you will be more likely, if your client hits something or the glue underneath comes undone from the pressure, you're going to get a nail that breaks. So you don't want to force the fit. You don't want to press it, and it kind of makes a little bit of a Y look to it. It kind of spreads out. Okay, you don't want to do that. That is the wrong size of a tip. It's much better to go one size big up, you know, where it's slightly bigger, and then if you have to, just file the sides. See here, I can put this here with absolutely no pressure. It's not going to spring back on me. That's the size of a tip that you would want. But again, you don't want to have visible nail plate. Take this finger, for instance. Okay, this one has a lot more of a free edge growth. So let's say I did this person's nails and it looked like this at first, okay? As it's growing out, if I didn't put this back very far, that doesn't give the client, you know, more than like a week or two before you start noticing something that looks like this. Where underneath the clear acrylic, you start seeing the free edge behind the tip. And so you do want to glue it just slightly back, and that will give your client about a week to 2 weeks without being able to see that at all. Maybe at 1 week, you might start to see a slight hint of color of the white, but it's not going to be very bad. And then when they come in for the 6-week fill, you can talk about your options. You can still get away usually at 2 weeks with just doing a fill. And then at the second fill, which would be 4 weeks, it would be very visible. And at that point, then you could talk about coming in and doing a rebalance to reshape and recenter that smile line. And so I hope that this helped somebody. Do not ever glue your tips far back down. It's not going to look nice. So you just always, it doesn't matter what tip you're using, what color tip you're using. Tips are just to make the nail extended. They are not to, you know, really give it any structure and strength. That is all going to be in your building of your apex and your C curve that's going to make the nail last. So the tips are basically just going to be there to make the nail longer, and in this case of the colored one, to give color easily without having to use colored acrylics. And so you just need it at the very edge. You do not need it further back, okay? So I hope that this helps somebody. Stay tuned next time, and I'll see you guys later. Happy nailing.